See, we're coming up on 7:05. Probably a good idea to get started. I will remind, I'll be the tech person on the call, and mostly I'll be quiet, but I'll remind everyone maybe now is a good time to put yourself on mute unless you are going to be one of the speakers. We will have an opportunity partway through the call for a Q&A period after Rick speaks. So with that, I will go ahead and put up our slides, and I believe Karen is starting us off.
Good evening. I'm Karen Wilson, and I'm a member of the Bedford Mothers Out Front chapter leadership team. I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you all for coming to our meeting. Our main focus this evening will be on our initiative to stop private jet expansion at Hanscom or anywhere. Specifically, we will be focused on the environmental review process and the public comment period. I'd like to welcome and thank our guest presenter, Rick Johnson. This evening's meeting was planned by Corinne Dowd, Sue Swanson, and myself. And I'd like to thank Bob Dowd for providing tech help for the meeting. Next slide, please. I'd like to review our meeting norms. Please name yourself and put your name and town in the chat if you're from a town other than Bedford. Please mute yourself when not speaking. Please be respectful of others. Please avoid acronyms and other in-group speech. And keep in mind that we are recording, so turn off your video if desired. Next slide. The mission of Mothers Out Front is to build our power as mothers and others to ensure a livable climate for all children. Next slide. The vision for Mothers Out Front is a swift, complete, and just transition to a clean energy future for everyone. Next slide. And with that, I'll turn this over to Corinne.
Thank you, Karen, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. We will start with background information on Mothers Out Front involvement with Stop Private Jet Expansion, and then we'll show a brief video with Katie Winchell talking about the Coalition to Stop Private Jet Expansion at Hanscom or anywhere. And our feature speaker, Rick Johnson, will discuss the state environmental review process for Massport's proposed Hanscom expansion, and then we'll take questions. Sue Swanson will then lead us through the action to write a public comment, and then Karen will share some quick and easy actions on other campaigns our chapter is working on. After we review the upcoming chapter events and close the meeting at 8:30, some of us will remain on the Zoom call to answer questions about tonight's action. Next slide. Massport and private developers are proposing a massive 50-acre build-out of new hangars at Hanscom's Field Civil Airport for private luxury jets. The public found out about this when the developers filed their environmental notification form. This was back in January of 2023. In response, Bedford Mothers Out Front filed a public comment opposing the project because of climate concerns. So this was a public comment to the ENF, the environmental notification form. Then we voted it in as a local chapter campaign. And then after that, we partnered with the Coalition to Stop Private Jet Expansion at Hanscom or anywhere. We've organized and participated in many events past year around this campaign. And now is another critical time. It's the public comment period. And it's our chance to send a message to Governor Healy's administration, and you'll be hearing more about that. Next slide. Mothers Out Front believes increased private jet use is not compatible with responsible climate action. In response to Massport's proposed expansion, Mothers Out Front adopted a statewide position opposing private jet expansion. And so far, 10 individual Mothers Out Front chapters have joined the coalition, including the Logan community chapters, Winthrop and East Boston. The statewide organization, Mothers Out Front Massachusetts, also partnered with the coalition. Next slide. 8 Bedford organizations have partnered with the coalition to stop private jet expansion. Mothers Out Front, Bedford Embraces Diversity, Bedford Democratic Town Committee, League of Women Voters, Hartwell Farms Homeowners Association, St. Paul's Green Team, First Parish, and Third Act. Next slide. Work at the municipal level on this includes the Energy and Sustainability Committee sent a letter opposing private jet expansion to the Select Board. And at their last meeting, they voted to submit a public comment. The Historical Preservation Commission voted to reverse support for the historic rehabilitation of tax credits benefiting the Navy hangar. The Select Board signed a letter, along with other Hanscom towns, opposing private jet expansion, which was sent to Governor Healy. They approved funds towards an emissions study on particulate matter of jet emissions, and they'll be finalizing their public comment at the next meeting. Next slide. Bob Dowd, who is doing the tech this evening, will now show a 4-minute video about the coalition to stop private jet expansion at Hanscom or anywhere and why that's so important. The video clip is from a talk that Katie Winchell, coalition coordinator, did earlier this month. Bob, could you cue up the video?
All right, please let me know if the video is jerky or if you don't hear audio. And here we go.
This morning.
Good morning. I'm Katie Winchell, and I've been invited to talk with you today about the Coalition to Stop Private Jet Expansion at Hanscom or Anywhere, SPJE for short, of which First Parish of Bedford is a member. Thank you for your support and for the opportunity to speak with you today. As you may know, Massport and Runway Realty Ventures are proposing a massive private jet expansion on 50 acres of land at Hanscom Field, which could ultimately house 79 additional private jets. These will include big jets, like Gulfstream 650s that are 100 feet long with 100-foot wingspans that can fly nonstop from Hanscom to China. Please note, this development plan has nothing to do with Hanscom Air Force Base, which is a non-flying base and is separate from Massport Civil Airport. Since I spoke with you on that snowy Sunday last February, the developers have filed a new report called a DEIR, a Draft Environmental Impact Report, as part of a state environmental review process. In the report, the developers lead with the fact that they've decreased the number of new hangars from 26 to 17, while in fact they've increased the total infrastructure by 27,000 square feet. They've simply made the hangars bigger so that, as in one case, they can accommodate a potential client's desire to keep all 4 of their private jets in one hangar. Even without this new expansion, private jet emissions at Hanscom alone already cancel nearly 50% of the climate gains from all solar PV ever installed in Massachusetts. If the plan goes forward, this will increase to 70%. Amazingly, the developers claim in their new report that this enormous facility for super-emitting private jets will reduce flights, will reduce greenhouse gas emissions, will be net zero, and will promote sustainable aviation fuels, SAFs. How is this possible? Well, when they say it's a net zero project, they only count emissions from buildings and ignore the hundreds of thousands of tons of aircraft emissions. When they say they'll promote SAFs, they neglect to point out that SAFs generate as much greenhouse gas emissions, sometimes more, as regular jet fuel, and that these biofuels would hijack arable land from food production. This would be a new fossil fuel infrastructure, plain and simple, as suggested by plans for 4 underground tanks of 80,000 gallons of jet fuel total and daily truck deliveries of 20,000 gallons. Their claims that the proposed facility will result in a decrease of flights is based on flawed methodology and have been refuted by a detailed independent analysis from a reputable firm, which found that the new facility would add 6,000 flights with resulting new greenhouse gas emissions. Senator Mike Barrett summed up the situation when he told the developers at a March public meeting, quote, "I know the destruction you folks intend to wreak on Massachusetts, and I resent it. Please don't erect these bogus environmental rationales for something that has nothing whatsoever to do with relieving the crisis that faces us in terms of climate. Just be honest about it. This is all about becoming a little richer yourselves by helping people even richer than you. And I ask, at what cost to all of us and our living planet?" A public comment period is now open until May 10th. This is a unique moment when each of us can make a difference through the simple act of submitting a comment. To make this easy, SPJE provides a toolkit on our website. You will not be alone. Over 14,000 people have signed our petition to the governor urging her to stop this expansion. And over 80 organizations across the state are now part of our SPJE coalition, including among others, UU Mass Action, Sierra Club Massachusetts, and Mothers Out Front Massachusetts, and Third Act Massachusetts. This is a moment when numbers count. The governor will be watching, and so will our state and congressional legislators. If you'd like to know more, you can find me at the Climate Cafe later this morning. In the meantime, I'd like to thank you for your interest and support.
All right, thank you. So we are about to, yes, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, Rick Johnson, who will discuss the state environmental review process and then take questions. Rick is a retired environmental lawyer who worked at the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, way back in the 1970s, and then worked in the Boston area for many years thereafter. He is a former chairman of the Environmental League of Massachusetts and a former chair of the Concord, Massachusetts Natural Resources Commission, the Conservation Commission in Concord. Thank you, Rick, for joining us tonight, and we look forward to what you have to share.
Well, thank you, Corinne, and thank you, Katie. I've heard this speech before because I was in church that day, but it was worth hearing again. It's a good one. And so I'm going to talk about the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act review process. Here's the report right here. It's a big one. They knew they had to come up with something, and so they made it thick and fat. And as we know, the review process allows for comments up until May 10th. Then the process closes, no more comments. And I know we've sent a lot of comments in, and maybe we'll send more tonight, and that's worth doing. Katie's coalition has made a good job of pointing out the deficiencies in the report, which are significant. Well, what happens after the comment period closes on May 10th and the comments are in? The Secretary of Environmental, Energy and Affairs, Rebecca Tepper, now can do one of 3 things. Number one, she could say, despite all those comments, the environmental impact report does the job. She could disagree with us and conclude that the report was adequate, and she could then determine that it was a final environmental impact report. We'll talk about what that means in a minute. Well, what are the other two things she could do? Well, number two, she could conclude, in line with our comments, that the environmental impact report is not adequate because it didn't consider the things that we have demanded it consider, the greenhouse gases primarily, but other things as well. And she could say, no, it's not ready to be a final EIR. It goes back to Massport and they have to close the gaps that she has found in the report. And that's hopefully what she will do and what we want her to do, to go back and slow the process down and address the issues that we have asked for. Well, that's the second thing she could do. The third thing she could do is kind of a compromise. She could say, well, it's not completely adequate, but it's pretty close. And I'm going to send it back to Massport with instructions to Massport to add some information that I think was lacking that should have been included. So that would allow Massport to go ahead and fill in whatever she told them to fill in, and then they would have a final environmental impact report. So after the comment period closes on May 10th, the Secretary has 7 days to issue one of these three decisions. And sometimes she doesn't really do it in the 7 days. There's really no way to compel her without going to court. So it could go beyond the 7 days. It could be 14 days or 20 days. So we don't necessarily get it at the end of the 7 days on May 17th, but it'll probably be pretty close. And at this point, we really don't know what she's going to do. The governor and the secretary have played their cards pretty close to the vest in this hand of poker, and they really haven't let us know what where they're thinking of going. We're sure that the governor is well aware of the coalition that has been built opposing the project, so it's definitely on her radar. And my guess would be that she and Rebecca Tepper and Melissa Hoffer and other state environmental leaders are really having a tough time deciding what to do. I think it's going to put them in a tough spot. The governor has run for office as a climate champion. She has done a lot of good climate stuff since she got into office, including appointing Melissa Hoffer. And I think she wants to go down in history as a strong climate governor. And this is a big bump in the road for her program. So my guess is there's going to be some tough conversations held within the administration on how to deal with this. If she were to decide that the environmental impact report was inadequate, that's good for us. It would then go back to Massport, and they'd have to take another shot at it. And effectively, we would be redoing this whole process some months from now when they responded to her demand that it be fleshed out further. The second possibility is that she sends it back with a determination that they have to add certain things, which they could add. And once again, that sort of puts us back a few more months, probably, which they have to try to comply with her requests. The third possibility, as I mentioned, is that she decides it's adequate and that the project can go ahead. Then it's up to us to take our next steps. And I'm sure that the coalition led by Katie will be working on that strategy if that's what happens. The possibilities include litigation, trying to bring a lawsuit and appeal the decision, which is possible under the regulations. The courts have not been particularly supportive of people bringing complaints about environmental impact reports if the proponent, in this case Massport, really tried to do a thorough job. And we think that they didn't, but they certainly have a big fat document, and that's why they have a big fat document, because they're going to hold that up in court and say, what do they want? Look at this huge document with all these wonderful drawings and maps and everything. This is a real environmental impact report. Judge, we don't need to do any more than this. So litigation is a tough road to hoe for those who are appealing a MIPA final environmental impact report, but it's not impossible. There is some room for appellate action to demand that the report be more inclusive. So that's litigation. So what else can we do? Well, we can certainly appeal to the governor and to our legislators and to try and stop the project if the EIR becomes final. That also is kind of a wild card because we don't know exactly what the governor will do. And if she did want to do something, she can't just flip a switch and say, no, I don't like this project. We're not going to do it. Her clout is to appoint members to the Massport board, and she has the right to do that over a staged period of time, but it would take her quite a while to gain control of the board. But she could certainly come out against the project. She could use her bully pulpit to lean on Massport to stop the project or cut it down or otherwise affect it. So if she chose to get into the action, she could certainly help us a lot, even though she couldn't just flip the switch and turn it off. And the same is true for the legislators. They don't really have the authority to tell Massport they can't do this project, but they do have a lot of authority over Massport in terms of overview that the legislature has over all government agencies. So they could get into the action as well, and they could help us to either slow it down further, whittle it down to a smaller project, or even stop it. I mean, Massport has been battling environmentalists like us for a long time. Just go and talk to the people in East Boston about their battles, which have gone on for decades. And there have been dozens of lawsuits brought and fought in the state courts, in the federal courts. And in general, Massport has gotten a lot of what it wants. So its mojo is, let's just bull ahead and batter down the opposition. Their history is not one of trying to make compromises with opponents or giving in to pressure. So we'll have a real contest on our hands if the environmental impact report is made final. The other piece of it is, as some of my friends at Mothers Out Front in Bedford know, there are local approvals are required in order to complete the project. The Board of Selectmen, the Planning Board, and I think the Board of Health too is involved. And there the issues are much more limited than climate. They really go to the safety of the project. But I think that officials in Bedford have shown interest in the larger dimensions to this contest. And I think there would certainly be some room for opposing the project at the local level, even if the governor, the legislature, or the courts were not able to stop it. So that's kind of the overview of where we are in the MIPA process. I would be glad to take any questions. And Katie, who now knows probably a lot more about this than I do, I'd be happy to have you jump in as well.
Well, thank you very much. That was a great overview. And yes, we're happy to have Katie join us for a portion of this meeting. And Bob Dowd will be facilitating the Q&A. So Bob, would you like to explain how we're going to logistically do this?
Indeed. Thank you. Yes. So if people have questions, I would ask that your first priority could be try to do the raise hand feature in Zoom. For many of you, it'll be a button at the bottom of the screen that has a little picture of a hand that says raise hand on it. Sometimes it's hidden. You have to go to the side where it says more with an ellipsis of 3 dots and click that, and that might show more tools, including the raise hand tool. If you can't find the raised hand tool, or if you're on a tablet, sometimes it's harder to get to, you can just hold your hand up like this, and I'll try to take note of it, but you'll have to have your camera on. Many of you do not have your camera on, so definitely do that. And I'll call on people as I see either the raised hand in Zoom or somebody wildly motioning at me. So open for questions at this point. And don't be shy. My hunch is that Rick did such a great job that there aren't questions. All right, so Bob has raised a hand, and Bob, don't forget to unmute, and then we'll go to Renu next.
Yeah, I think I'm unmuted. I just wanted to make a comment. I have a long history of being involved with atmospheric science and climate change, namely at least 60 years, more than that. And but I noticed that there was an article some of you may have seen in the Bedford Citizen just this past week, I think, about some work done by some scientific work done that has measured what were described as ultrafine particles, that is nano-sized particles in the area by measurements in several places. And that it seems to suggest that these particles, at least some portion of them, maybe a large part of them, are coming from aircraft at Hanscom. And the question I think that this raises is, one, instead of simply focusing on climate, which I think is a big deal, it may be useful to look at this topic because it may have health issues as far as a lot of the us local inhabitants are concerned. And maybe that issue could be dwelt on a little and put into the discussion as well. So I just wanted to point that out for anyone who hasn't seen it. And the connection with specific health issues is not totally clear in the article that was written, as I recall, but people may want to look at it or even talk with the author, who intends to do a more comprehensive result later in the summer, I think, or fall, and see what one might get out of that to put into this same context of the Hanscom expansion. Thank you.
So any response comment? I didn't hear a specific question that was asked. It might have been an informational comment.
Well, the coalition has a group that's working on the PFASs and the Superfund site, which is here as well, sort of the whole toxics question. There's a working group the coalition has working on this. And I think that as the process plays out, particularly if it got to litigation, but even just in dealing with the governor and at the local level too, that the question of toxics is definitely going to be in the mix in terms of what we can do to try and stop the project.
Katie, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, only that the ultrafine particle health study is included as one of the things for people to talk about in their public comment in our DEIR toolkit. And one thing that we are requesting is that I believe Professor Huda has said that she will have her final report and conclusions in October. So one of the requests that we ask that people include in their comment is that the DEIR process be suspended until that particular study is concluded and we have the results.
Bob McClatchy, I see you raised your hand again. Was this a follow-on to that comment?
Just point out that for some reason, I can't seem to get my hand to lower. That's the only reason it's still up.
Oh, no problem. I will lower it for you. There. All right, Renu, you're up. And then Sue.
I was just wondering if more numbers is good. Like, is it worth it for us to do comments on different topics? And does it matter if it comes all together? Like if one person does like 4 in a row, boom, 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 or should we space it out like every few days or something? Does it make a difference?
Thank you, Renu. I would say that all comments are good. The more comments, the better. And the fact that they all came from one person and 4 different comments, that's fine. The Massport will be required to respond to those comments. And so the more comments you give them to respond to, the more difficult you're making it for them, and the more you're making them think about what they're doing. So I'd say don't hold back on the comments.
All right. Thank you. And on to Sue.
Thank you. One comment, you mentioned the local aspects, and the select board is focusing on that for their public comment. And they published a draft in the agenda for their meeting last Monday, a week ago, which is open to the public. You go into the town meeting boards and commissions agendas and you can read it. And they really do talk about things like traffic problems, like noise, water and air quality locally. What else is it? And then a lot of other things that were really impressive, that the report has real foolish errors in terms of false addresses and non-existent traffic patterns and all this kind of thing. So if I can after the formal discussion, we can give you a link to that draft. It's still a draft. It's not the submitted comment, but they did publish it. They're planning to vote on Monday next week. So if you wanted to wait, if you're really interested in the local aspects, write a more general climate related one tonight, and then dig into the local aspects when the select board has published their comment. And I did have a question too, is Rick, you started talking about once a final report is issued, there's a few things that the public can still do. And I got the litigation part, but then did you say other things as well? I somehow missed that.
It would be putting pressure on the governor.
Okay.
And the local approvals.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. And Maureen is next, and then Jennifer.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maureen Riccici. I'm the chair of the Board of Health in Bedford. And this is in response to Bob and to all of you. I just want to let you know that as a chair of the Board of Health, I'm going to be joining the chairs from both Lexington and Concord at a HATS meeting on this Thursday evening, to hear Professor Huda talk. So more to come, possibly from the Board of Health. Thanks.
Thank you. And Jennifer, remember to unmute, and you may or may not choose to undo your camera.
Oh, hello, this is Jennifer Bowles from Bedford. And I was just going to say almost exactly what Maureen added, but about the HATS, the Hanscom Area Towns meeting on Thursday evening at 7 p.m. It's a virtual meeting. And I'd add that would be a wonderful place if anyone is interested in learning more about Professor Huda's ultrafine particulate study, that she'll be giving that presentation, and the meeting's open to the public. The agenda and the login information, it's probably in all the towns, but I know for sure it's on the Bedford Town website, if you want to check that. And she's a great speaker, very, very clear. And I think you would find it very interesting. That's all. Thank you.
Excuse me, what was the date of that?
This Thursday, the 25th.
This Thursday.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you, Jennifer. Are there any other questions or comments? And again, if you're having trouble with the hand tool, just make a vigorous motion. All right. Seeing none, I think it is time to resume. And we'll go back to viewing our slides. And who is next up to speak?
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Rick. That was great, and we feel very grateful to have someone of your expertise that we can connect with. So next up is Sue Swanson, who is going to talk about some actions that we can do regarding this. Sue?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you both, Rick and Kati. Your presentations have given at least me a much better understanding of the context and the process that we're in the midst of. And as you both said, I can't stress enough how valuable thoughtful comments will be to our campaign to stop this expansion. The coalition developed a wonderful, detailed toolkit addressing the whole several hundred pages of the report. And then Mothers Out Front has taken this and made it something that one can read and digest within a short period of time, like tonight. Next slide, please. Okay, as Kati said, there's actually several false claims, but Mothers Out Front took these three and decided that they would be the most accessible to read and understand a little bit of it, understand enough to write a comment. She also did a wonderful job, and I'm not going to repeat what she said about the fact that the developers claim it's net zero, but it really isn't. They claim that there's such a thing as sustainable aviation and using biofuels, but actually they actually do emit carbon emissions. And so while they're not fossil fuels, they are emitting fuels. And then they claim that they're not going to generate any more greenhouse gas emissions, but yet they're building massive new fuel tanks and they're planning for daily deliveries. Now, this has to be used somewhere. So it's obviously there is going to be new emissions. Next slide, please. Okay. What we're inviting you to do tonight is to take the kit. Is someone putting this in the, is someone putting the link in the chat? It's in the tech notes of the slide. Yeah, thank you.
I can do that. Unless
Thank you
someone else.
both. The action is a two-part action. The first and most important for tonight is to write your comment and submit it. This will require access to your email account. Hopefully, since you're all online, you do have access. And what you want to do is address this email according to this sample. And it's to Alexander Streisky, who is the MEPA analyst who works for Secretary Tepper. And you want to briefly introduce yourself and then say why you're writing. Next slide, please. Okay, oh, no, sorry about that. That's in the toolkit. There's 3 paragraphs, and there's a sample paragraph for each sample, and each time you choose one of those 3 topics. There's talking points that you can use if you have your own experience, like if you're on the Board of Health, or if you're on the Conservation Commission, or you live near Hanscom, you have personal knowledge of some of these issues. So include that in your comment, and then end it with a request to address the concerns that you have and to stop the project. That is all there is. When you do send it, we would appreciate if you blind copy the address that's given in the example so that we have a record of who's writing and how many there are. Then if you're done, and you haven't signed the petition, which is now on the screen, you can do that. It's just to Governor Healy saying that there's broad support for this campaign across the state. And she needs to know that if she takes bold action and says that this is not acceptable, she needs to know that there's lots and lots of support across the state. Send it to your friends within the state, and you're welcome to share the toolkit as well. Like we said, comments from everyone who cares about this issue would be most welcome. And then I think we really appreciate the fact that you're here, that you care enough about spending your evening with us. It's going to take all of us working together to create a cleaner, greener climate for us and for our children to come. It's a big job, but together we have power to do it. Okay. Thank you, those of you who have stayed on. I appreciate it. And I particularly appreciate, as I mentioned earlier, the fact that you've come and that you've started to write comments and are involved in this collective effort. Collective action gives me hope for the future, because it's going to take a lot of people to tip the scales in front of these solutions that make a difference. Every month, with every step, we build our movement bigger, a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger. We raise our voices a little bit louder, and we engage each other to join in our actions. We make more decision makers listen, take action, and we build a significant moment for change. That's the power of collective action. Okay, so it's not all about Hanscom, although that's a huge chunk of what we're doing right now. We have other programs as well, and we're so glad that you're here to learn what our Net Zero Circle is doing. Karen.
Hello, once again, my name is Karen Wilson, and I'm the leader of the Net Zero Circle. And I'm going to ask you to take 2 quick and easy, important actions this evening to support the work that Net Zero Circle is doing. Next slide, please. The Bedford Community Choice Aggregation Program, or CCA, is the name of the town of Bedford's electricity program. The CCA provides residents competitively priced electricity and allows participants to choose how much of their electricity comes from renewable sources. The default level in the current contract is an additional 20% of renewables above the state required minimum. By far, once enrolled, most people simply remain at the default level of renewables, called the Bedford Local Green in the current contract, rather than opting up to 50% or 100% renewables. CCA participants always have the option to change their level of renewables. They can opt down to the state required minimum, Bedford Basic, or if they want, they can opt out of the program at any time without penalty. Next slide. Every 3 years, the CCA electricity supply contract is renewed through a bidding process, which determines what the consumer rates will be for the duration of the contract. The bidding process for the next 3-year contract is about to begin, and the Select Board will decide on April 29th what level of renewables to establish as the default. We want the Select Board to make 100% renewables the new default in the next CCA contract. So we're asking our supporters to sign a petition. Please take a moment to sign the petition now. We'll put a link to it in the chat, or if you prefer, you can scan the QR code in order to link to the petition. Increasing the amount of renewables in the CCA default will reduce the greenhouse gas emissions from Bedford homes. It will also stimulate the growth of renewable energy production in the region, because the additional renewables come only from solar, wind, anaerobic digestion, and low-impact hydro located within New England. We hope that the Select Board will choose to increase the CCA default to 100% renewables, but there is a good chance they will choose a lesser amount. The more signatures we can collect on the petition, and the more people who shirt up and show up at the Select Board meeting on the 29th, the more likely they are to choose a level that gets us closer to our goal. Next slide. As part of a statewide Clean Heat, Clean Air campaign, we gave a presentation called Transitioning Off Gas to Clean Heat to the Energy and Sustainability Committee in late February. In that presentation, we discussed some barriers to transitioning off gas and some bills in the state legislature designed to address them. At the end of the presentation, we asked the committee to send letters to Senator Barrett and Representative Gordon, and they did. If you missed our presentation, links to the recording and the slides are in the chat. Here's where you come in. We've also written group sign-on letters to Representative Gordon and Senator Barrett, asking them to support these bills, which include the Future of Clean Heat bill and the gas moratorium bill. We would appreciate it if you would sign these letters by completing one brief form. We'll put that link in the chat. You have not had a time to do all of these things, but I hope that you will continue to work on that. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for signing the Select Board petition to make the default in the new CCA contract 100% renewables. Thank you for signing the letters to Representative Gordon and Senator Barrett. And last but not least, thank you to everyone who pledged to vote and turned out to vote at town meeting to help pass the multifamily zoning overlay districts. Passing those warrant articles was a big win for climate. Next slide. Whoops. Next slide. Thank you. That's it. Here is a list of our upcoming events. Nope. Yep. This Thursday morning, there will be a Stop Private Jets expansion standout at Veterans Park from 8 to 9 a.m. All of the SPJE standouts are listed in the Bedford Citizen Calendar, where you can find an RSVP link. On Saturday, April 27th, from 3 to 5 p.m., there'll be an informal in-person crafting chat with crafting optional. This is a really nice opportunity to gather informally and get to know one another better. Let us know in the chat if you are interested and we'll send you the details. You can also use the RSVP link that appears in the news blast. On Monday, April 29th, the Select Board will meet to decide the percentage of renewable electricity in the new CCA default. We need a strong turnout of supporters at the meeting. If you have a Mothers Out Front shirt, wear it. We don't know what time this will occur. We'll send an email blast when we do know the time. But if you think you might be able to attend, please let us know in the chat so we can be sure to keep you informed. Next Tuesday, April 30th, from 4:30 to 5:30, the Transportation Circle will meet to discuss our Stop Private Jet expansion campaign. If you're in the Transportation Circle, the link will be emailed to you. If not, please put your name in the chat, or you can email Corinne to ask for the Zoom link to discuss our next Mothers Out Front statewide campaign. Next slide. And that concludes our meeting. Thank you very much to Rick Johnson and to Katie for coming and sharing your knowledge with us. And we'll stay on a little bit longer so that you can finish up your letters, ask questions, sign the petition, sign the letters. We're here to answer any questions. Thank you, everyone.